And we are live on the PHU Dynasty podcast. This is episode 53. We are in the last week of the season already. I can't believe that. It feels like it just started yesterday. But we are in the playoff push right now. And boy, do we have a real doozy this year for the last three spots in the playoffs here. So Sean did a lot of work to come up with all the scenarios for you guys. We're going to talk about them all and it should be a great time. Sean, how are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm doing so good. I'm so sad though that the season's like already over for the most part. Well, playoffs, but like it goes by so fast.
Yeah, the fantasy season is almost over, and that's sad because then they have to wait so long to get it back. But the good news is
Yeah,
that the PHU Dynasty podcast never sleeps,
that's
and
right.
we will be here throughout the entire off season to talk about draft
We're
and all
gonna
kinds of great
we're
stuff.
gonna blink and we're gonna be talking about everybody's draft picks and like who should take who. We're gonna be doing freaking mock drafts of guessing where people are gonna go. We're gonna
Charlie
get
Campbell's
more.
going to come back on. It's going to be great.
Hopefully, we're gonna get some more Najee Harris clips.
Oh, there's always Najee Harris clips. You know
Oh,
that.
Najee Harris.
please.
There's always a Najee Harris clip ready to go. Najee Harris might not even play tomorrow, by the way. He's questionable right now.
That game, I've never been so excited to not watch a football game in my
I'm
life.
gonna watch it because I have Jalen Warren and
Yeah.
George Pickens, and I kind of need some magic there. I mean, it'd be kind of nice if Harris didn't play for me.
What is a realistic over under number for that game?
I mean, I think the final score is gonna be like 3-6.
Yeah.
Like maybe over under 25 realistically.
I would love. I wonder if there's a sports book that has this out there about more defensive points being scored than offensive points tomorrow. I would take that, especially if it was like pretty good odds.
I mean, Trubisky is bad.
Trubisky versus Zappy.
Bailey Zappi, who's also bad. Not good.
No Ramondre, no Najee, no Pop Douglas. Literally.
No Kayshon Boutte. No Kayshon at all. It's a tough go out there. It's gonna do the Patriots are really bad.
They're tanking beautifully.
I mean, it's one of the best tanks I've ever seen.
It's impressive.
It is impressive. All right, so tonight we have quite a bit to get through, so let's get right into it. We're going to start talking about the playoff scenarios for each of the remaining, I think it's 4 or 5 teams in the hunt. I think it's 4. Sean has done a great job of coming up with all the different things that could happen, all the different scenarios, and what needs to happen for each team to get into the playoffs. So I've come up with a little PowerPoint based on that. So we'll start right off the bat here with the Lauderdale Lionheads. And basically, I think, Sean, if you correct me if I'm wrong, I think 3 of the 4 teams are in a win and in situation. It really just depends.
Yeah,
Who does
it's all because of this. I think what we'll end up talking the most about on this episode, or at least what I would want to talk about the most in this episode, it's going to be the Tibbs and Alex matchup because they're both in a win and in situation. The loser, it's going to be real tight if they make the playoffs if they lose. So that's really it makes it pretty easy for Vince. If he wins, he's in because he's got such a point lead on whoever the loser is in that other game. So that creates a win and in situation for him.
Right. So the Lauderdale Lionheads can win and get in easy, and they can also earn the 5th seed with the win. And then if I lose, he'll bump up into that 5 slot. So the Lionheads, we'll talk about a little bit more. Also, Sean, at the end of these scenarios, I have each matchup and their projected lineup as well. So we'll talk about the specific matchups when we get there.
Yeah, and I will add the can earn any particular seed. I gave that to every team that's still in a non-clinching or trying to clinch situation. It's just whatever their best case scenario is where they can land. Just going forward, just so we know.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's go to our next team in the list, and it is the Chile Cheese Fries. Once again, in a win and in situation, and they will clinch with a Lionheads loss Lionheads loss and a Plague loss if they do not win. So there is a way for them to get in even if they lose, but it's going to be challenging. And it looks like, Sean, you have their top potential seed being a 4 seed with a win if I win, and then he also maintains a 26-point lead of points on the battle axes. So I think the cheese fries are in a decent spot here. They get Alex on an interesting week too. We'll get to that exactly, but we do have a Joe Flacco start it might be happening here.
Could be a wild matchup.
I really can't wait. Honestly, I'm more interested in that matchup than anything else. Even mine potentially. It's just such an interesting one, and of course the rivalry is there too. So it'll be a fun one. All right, let's go to the next one. It's the Philadelphia Plague. They are not in a win and in situation, so they will need to win their game and then get a little bit of help. First scenario is they can win and the Lionheads lose and they will get in. They also could win and then have me lose, but they also need to maintain a 5.5 point lead over me, which could be. I think that might end up being the outcome based on how Scavelli's team shows up against me. That might end up being the case, but we'll see. But 5.5. I mean, if you told me at the beginning of the year that I would be within 5.5 points of the Philadelphia Plague, I would have said you're ass crazy. But here we are. So the Plague can also earn a top seed of 5. That would require them to win, have me lose, and the Lauderdale Lionheads lose, also keeping a point lead. So that's quite a bit of things that need to happen for the 5th seed, but it can happen. All right, so my headset is going to try to die on me, but I'm going to let it ride. All right, so the Texas Armadillos here have a win and in situation and will get a 3rd seed, very likely over the Battle Axes because it's a heads-up matchup. We'll both have the same record if the Armadillos win, but it looks like I'll end up having more points. I have about a 60-point advantage at this point right now. And then if the Lauderdale Lionheads lose and the Plague both lose, then I will also get in with a loss. And then last scenario, the Plague win, but if I outscore the Plague by 5.5 points in week 14, then I will get in. So it's going to be quite a wild finish to the end of this one.
I love that the points for have really come into play so much this season. I love that so much. I think
it really is. It's something else. And luckily for me, I'm getting some key players back from injury. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, while the Plague might be going in the same direction as well. So, all right, so let's get to our next one, which is the Muskegon Muskrats. They are in a win and in situation with the big game against the the Cheese Fries. Second scenario is they can also get in with a Lionheads and a Plague loss, which seems unlikely. But it could happen. I think the Lionheads are playing. I know the Plague are playing the Bombers, and the Lionheads are also playing the Long Gamers, which is quite frankly a huge matchup for my game. So I'm very interested in that game. We'll get to that in a minute. And their highest seed that they can earn is a 4th seed. They will need to win, have the Armadillos win, and outsourcing, not outscoring. That's great editing right there. Outsourcing the Battle Axes by 9.92.
9.92 Asian points. If
sure.
It's outsourcing, so.
Outsourcing some. Got to get that factory going. All right, so let's start with the matchups here. Obviously, this is the big one. I included the projected lineups, or I didn't actually include projected ones. I included what was out there right now, except in the case of Dustin. I altered his a little bit because James Cook was not in his starting lineup and likely will be. So this is what's out there right now. Very clear difference at quarterback here. Joe Flacco coming back from the dead. I honestly, if you would have told me Joe Flacco would start for the Browns in week 14 in a pivotal matchup to get Tibbs into the playoffs, I would have laughed hard in your face. But here we are.
Not even fantasy related. Like
he's anything.
He's playing to get the Browns into the playoffs.
I just never thought that would happen. I mean, I thought he was completely done. I thought it was over. So we have Joe Flacco. I mean, so let's think about this. Let's talk about the scenarios at quarterback. I feel like this is kind of the talk of the town, I guess, over the last 24 hours here. I mean, if Flacco doesn't play, and I picked up both of the quarterbacks that were available, What
I
does he
noticed
do?
that.
What does he do? I'm playing a little chess here. So I just want to see what the cheese fries end up doing if that's the case.
I
He took the first team reps though.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to be the starter. He threw for like 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is more production than they've gotten from anybody else that
Yeah,
wasn't
he had 20
Watson. So
points.
it makes sense to start him this week, but you're still starting Joe Flacco at
With your
quarterback.
playoff hopes on the line. It's so weird.
Joe Flacco can just drop dimes and get pass interference calls down the field, or he can literally do nothing. And I think there's always a good chance of him doing nothing.
I also think
So,
too, it's an
I don't know.
interesting matchup with Cleveland playing the Jaguars. Jaguars pass rush has been pretty good this year. Josh Allen's been very good, and Joe Flacco at this point in his career is more than a statue. He is completely ingrained into the ground. I don't think he's moving anywhere. So it could be a game where it gets a little bit sloppy and the offensive line doesn't hold him up. But the Browns do have a decent line.
Jags coming off a bad loss on Monday night. This feels like it's going to be like a gritty, low scoring like kind of game because that's what the coaches on either side are probably looking for. Because I don't think either of them are going to lean on their teams to be able to put up even in the 20s. I would say
It's going to be a slugfest, that's for sure. I mean, I think
but
it's going to be a little bit on the lower side of things for for scoring here. I put in the wrong headset thing. Hold on.
yeah, I would say even in that matchup itself, like both teams pretty good against the run. Cleveland gives up some bigger plays than Jacksonville does in the run. So I don't know how that's going to affect the quarterback position, but Jacksonville can definitely be thrown on. But what's Amari Cooper even looking like right now? Is he going to play?
I think he was questionable with like an air towards him playing, but it could change over the next couple of days. But I mean, if he doesn't play, it's a very interesting one. We'll get to the Elks lineup, but they have two Browns in the lineup right now that are not Amari Cooper, which is not good for the receiving core.
Spicy. That's how you get the first pick.
I saw a Cedric Tillman in there, so I'm not very thrilled with that. But I think that'll change.
He fits the Joe Flacco mold of chuck and pray.
I mean, it's him and Elijah Moore right now in the Elk lineup.
Yeah. Elijah Moore had like 12 targets in that game or something. Something stupid.
Yeah, it was a pretty high amount. I think it was either 10 or 12 or something. It was pretty nuts. But yeah, I mean, Joe Flacco, obviously not an ideal scenario, but Tibbs has maintained that this strategy is what he was shooting for, and this is what it is. So we'll see if it pays off or not.
I mean, it's a real double down on his strategy considering he's playing against the quarterback that was on his roster to start the year.
That is exactly right.
It's a real full circle moment.
It is. It would be really interesting if it came down to a Pat Mahomes needing to get 29 points or something like that, and he ends up pulling it off and knocking him out of the playoff contention this year. That'll be quite a, like you said, full circle moment. So getting into the running backs, pretty interesting matchup this week with running backs. Rachaad White going against Atlanta and Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not sure who Detroit's playing this week, but Jahmyr Gibbs has been a little bit, I don't want to say down, but he's getting much less carries now that David Montgomery has come back. But both very solid starting running backs here.
Efficient with his carries, but like only having one catch last week was weird for him. Sam Laporta kind of just ate up all of the targets in that offense last week, so we'll see if it's any different. But it's always weird to see, like, you very rarely see a team have a tight end and a running back both being such a high volume and efficient player at the same time. So I'm wondering if like Detroit plays matchups and like dictates which one's going to be a better matchup for the week and stuff like that. I think so.
That makes a lot of sense, especially because really until recently, with Jameson Williams kind of getting a little hotter, they haven't had like that true number 2 receiver. So it's basically been Amon-Ra getting 15 targets a game and then splitting the rest of them between the running backs and Laporta. There hasn't been that true second option.
Did you see that Jameson touchdown, by the way?
It was beautiful. He's so fast.
He's so fast. Holy
he glides.
Was there a PFF like miles per hour on that touchdown? Did you see
I
it?
don't know. I did see that DK Metcalf touchdown from I think last week or the week before. He had like 22 miles an hour, which is just absurd for
Nuts.
a guy his size.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was moving. I saw that highlight when I got off the plane. I was like, oh my god, this guy is just moving right now. I just need to see a little more consistency out of him, but
Mhm.
he's trending up, which is good after 2 years of kind of doing nothing. Okay, so running backs on the other side. So the Muskrats are going to be trotting out Zach Moss and DeAndre Swift as of right now. He's also got Hubbard and Harris in the flex spots. Harris right now is very questionable to play. Frankly, that'll be a pretty large loss for the Muskrats because Harris has been better as of late. Um, and then with Hubbard, the trade seems to be paying off actually right now. Hubbard's been pretty good lately, even if it was for a second round pick. Um, so what do you think? What do you think about this Muskrats running back starting core right now?
Um, I like Zach Moss this week. I think Cincinnati's not a very good defense,
They're not. No.
so I think and Zach Moss and specifically the Colts have shown that they can pretty much run on everybody. I think the only team they haven't had success against really in the run game this year is Tennessee, which is pretty normal for teams to not have success. So I think that's good. I think he's probably like a fringe RB1 this week to me.
Mm.
Maybe like somewhere in that like 10 to 12 to 14 range. Swift is tough. Dallas is a good defense, and he got almost knocked the fuck out at the end of last week's game.
He got smoked, and he was very inefficient last week, 6 for 13.
Yeah, since the Bucks game way back earlier in the season, he really hasn't been great. He hasn't been bad. He
I
hasn't
mean, he
been
hasn't had a 100-yard game since that Bucks game.
yeah, and
But
that
he's getting some targets though. He had 6 targets last week.
yeah. So we'll see how that goes. They really do need to get that run game back going, but that's a Eagles fan complaint, not a fantasy related thing.
And it seems to be that as of 3 hours ago, the Steelers are optimistic that Harris is going to play. So
Who?
Najee Harris.
Who?
Oh boy,
Najee Harris.
he set me up for it, and I let it ride.
I have a plan in place.
And then Chuba is definitely the lead guy in Carolina. Even with like the coaching like updates and changes, he's still got the bulk of the work, so he'll be good with volume. But he's playing New Orleans. New Orleans has been a little more down than up the last few weeks on defense, so they could be good, but hey, you never know. It's tough. The Carolina's so bad.
They stink. They stink, Sean. And the Bucks barely beat them. Barely.
Barely.
Very bad. All right, so let's get into the receiving cores for each one of these teams. Probably the strength of both of these teams at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman, and DJ Moore for the cheese fries. I can't speak a whole lot on Waddle. I haven't really followed his game, but he's been a little bit slow this year from what I can remember. Wide receiver 29 for the year. He's had a couple of bigger weeks, but most weeks is looking like 5 points, 6 points, 4 points. Not exactly what he probably was thinking he was going to get out of him, but it might be more of a long-term play.
I think it's a mix of Tyreek obviously being just
Insanity.
crazy. And then I'm pretty sure he's just been fighting like injuries all year for a guy with like a bit of a smaller frame. It's been probably pretty tough. I think that just might be what's going on with Waddle because I think he's much closer to his season last year than what he's doing this year for sure.
And Michael Pittman has been really strong over the last, I don't know how many weeks, like 7 weeks it seems like. Pretty much almost a guarantee for 10 points at this point. But in the last couple of games, he's been peppered with targets. He had 16 targets in the last game and 13 targets in the game before that. So he finished with 11 and 17. And he gets that Cincinnati Bengals defense who's been a little bit susceptible to the pass game. So I like that matchup a lot. And then moving down to DJ Moore, not as crazy as the beginning of the year, but still he's starting to pick it up again. He had 15 points with the return of Justin Fields in week 11. then 12 points in week 12. Or I'm sorry, 12 in week 12, and then a bye week last week, and then he gets Detroit at home. So that
Yeah,
seems like a pretty good matchup for him.
Yeah, that secondary is tough in Detroit right now. That'll be a good matchup. That'll be a blow up week for DJ more than likely.
And then Taysom Hill at the tight end position here, just somehow just chugging along.
Tight end,
whatever you want to call him. He's somehow a tight end.
He should just be a flex since every league
Just
has
FLX. Yeah. Every what league do you
why
play
is
in at
it-
this point that doesn't have a flex?
Why is that so difficult? I don't understand. Like,
I mean, he doesn't throw the ball really at all at this
he
point.
doesn't throw it. He doesn't catch it that much. He's done more this year than he ever has. But
I feel like at this point they have him listed as quarterback tight end. I feel like it should be running back tight end. Like I don't get it. But anywho, I digress. So that's a tough matchup against Laporta there for the Muskrats. Laporta has been a super stud.
awesome.
I'm very jelly, and I wish I had him. So there's not a whole lot more to say. He's been crushing. He had 21 points last week, 12 the week before that, and he gets at Chicago, who can't cover anything in the middle of the field. So I like that matchup a ton. Who else haven't we talked? We haven't talked about the flex players for the Cheese Fries. They got 3 quality players here. Zay Flowers coming off a bye. You got Brees Hall, who everybody knows how talented he is. He's questionable this week, and he wasn't practicing today.
Yeah, didn't practice.
So that's
today,
a little.
Wednesdays are usually a day off if you're not feeling too great. So not a big deal as of yet.
And he also hasn't really been playing great over the last 5 weeks. I think he had a good week 11 against the Bills, but so he had 6, 7, 13, 4, 4. So it's not like he's not blowing it up either. So maybe a replaceable player at this point.
You've got a below average coach, a bottom 5 OC when he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers under center.
That's true.
A bottom 3 offensive line. Like
very bad.
There's just no hope. There's nothing. They're going back to Zach Wilson. That's how bad the other quarterbacks.
They have no other option. Like what else are they gonna do?
They're going to waive Tim Boyle, which he should never have been on an NFL.
Why didn't they just keep Mike White? Like what was so hard about that? Did they just we need Tim Boyle?
You could sign Joe Flacco.
You can find. I mean, apparently you can just find Joe Flacco off the freaking street and he's okay. I don't know. That team stinks. They're just a bad organization. They can't get it together.
Trash.
All right, and then last, Josh Jacobs playing against Minnesota. It's kind of a tougher matchup. He is RB9 for the year. He had a huge week prior to the bye. He had 19 points against the Chiefs, 20 carries, 110 yards, and a touchdown. You got to like that.
Yeah, he gets all the work there. He'll have a good game. Minnesota is a very gimmicky defense. I think it's probably the best way to describe them.
That's a good one.
Not a lot of talent, but really good coaching, blitzing the absolute shit out of everybody.
Yeah, but I love that.
So, I love it. I love Brian Flores. I wish he was the Eagles DC.
But he's a great DC.
For sure.
All right, now here's the tough question. Who wins this matchup? This is the coin flip of a century for me.
I'm trying not to be biased, but I really don't like that Tibbs didn't do anything about the quarterback position and isn't planning on it. And it just feels like that's going to be the thing that ends up biting him in the ass.
I think it's a little bit of that, and then if you look at Alex's core of pass catchers, I kind of like that. I mean, Ridley's been hotter. I know it might not have Lawrence, but he's been hotter. Higgins is coming back. Puka's Puka, and then Laporta has been a stud. I'm gonna go. God, it really is a coin flip. I think I'm gonna go Muskrats. With Hubbard getting the touches now too, that it's looking better in the flex area for him. And then he's got some guys on the bench he could throw in case of Najee not playing and whatnot. So I think that the depth might win out there for the Muskrats, and then of course having Pat Mahomes with the potential to blow up at any point. Like you said, I think was it 2 straight losses for the Chiefs. Somebody said in the chat earlier, 2 straight losses. They're not going to be happy about that and I think it's a home game. Yeah, home game against Buffalo.
Mhm.
So I'm feeling a lot better about Mahomes this week than previous weeks. So I'm going with the Muskrats. So it seems like we're in agreement. All right, let's go to the next
Very
matchup.
slightly, yeah.
So it's your matchup here against the Lionheads.
Oh, hey.
A big game for the Lionheads. They really got to win this one. They do have a little bit of issues this week with some bye weeks. They're starting some players that you might not think would be in a playoff contender lineup. But he is struggling with a few buys. Let's say, so he's got James Conner, Terry McLaurin, and Trey McBride all on buys, all of which have been solid contributors for him this season.
Yeah. Terry's going to score the same number of points he has the last 2 weeks before this week.
I mean, luckily the running back stable is just about as solid as they can get with Montgomery and Bijan. They're going to get their touches. So I'm not worried about those two guys. I am a little bit worried about a Dontavian Wicks in the starting lineup with Tutu Atwell. I mean, Wicks has been solid, but maybe not playoff caliber, perhaps. But I like the guy. I think he's a quality player. And then with Tutu kind of being a little bit lower on the pecking order, that's an interesting one. He had 1 point last week, so I don't know. I don't know about that one, but DJ Chark is also very questionable, along with, just the fact that he's tied to Bryce Young. I hate that, and he has done hardly anything this year, especially over the last 5 weeks. He has 2, 6, 0, 3, and 5. So not a whole lot of hope there, but you never know. So to me, there's a lot of things working against the Lions' heads here, specifically with some of these depth plays that are having to be made. And frankly, your team seems to be firing on all cylinders, and I don't see it's getting better with Kyron coming back now. Kamara's been very solid all year. It's looking really good. I think you're in a great position this year. What do you think?
I'm going to win.
I think with Tyreek, Amon-Ra, and AJ Brown, it's hard for me to say no to that. It's
Tyreek Hill is home against the Titans this week.
That's a 200-yarder.
And he's going for 2,000 yards.
He wants it, yeah.
He wants it real bad.
Selfish son of a bitch wants it. Of course he
Oh,
does.
yeah.
I mean, this is a great team. Courtland Sutton's been awesome too, in the limited number of targets that he's getting in that kind of boring offense, but he gets all those red zone touches. I love Amon-Ra this year. It's funny. My redraft team is somewhat similar to your team here. I have Tyreek and Amon-Ra, and every week those two guys are just a lock for 10 points or more, and I love it. It feels good. Running back wise,
the only matchup I think I'm not very confident is quarterbacks. Like, which is funny because I traded him Dak. And as soon as I traded him Dak went on a fucking tear, which is fine because I'm never going to – when you've got like one of those guys at quarterback, like you're never going to start the other guy, and Dak was the other guy. So like I'm fine trading him away, but
I mean he's definitely been on a heater.
Yeah,
we've seen Dak.
He's going to need him drop like 40, 50 points this week.
Yeah, I mean he has to have at least a 30-point performance from Dak to kind of match some of this elite production you're getting out of Kyron, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Alvin. I mean, there's a lot going against him. But he does have two really, like we said, really quality running backs. Debo's been hotter lately. Cooper Kupp has been a little bit better I guess last week he had a touchdown and 8 targets, so it seems like that might be turning around for him. Pacheco has been very solid as well. So it's not like this Lionheads team is completely decimated at this point, but with the bye weeks, it's a bad timing with the bye weeks because he really could have used McBride and he really could have used James Conner back in the lineup, but unfortunately he's gonna have to grind it out this week.
Yeah, I don't know why the hell they're doing week 14 bye weeks in the NFL. It does why?
It seems kind of crazy. Yeah, I don't love it. I feel like if they're going to do buys, they really truly need to be in the middle of the year. But
and there were week 8 or 9, there was no buys at all.
Yeah, you're right. I noticed that too. It was right in the middle of the season. There was maybe I had one player on buy. It was so odd. and then last week I was smoked with bye week, so it's very interesting. I'm gonna pick you in this game. I would assume you would pick you.
Mhm.
That's just my honest assumption. And then let's get to our next game. Unfortunately, not a great game here. The Plague truly should be in the driver's seat here, getting Justin Jefferson back. Um, the Bombers just really having a rough go of it this season. Frankly, it happens every time I look at it, but the Bombers should have a better team on paper than they actually are. It's an age old saying, but are you seeing anything here from the Bombers that would give you a reason to believe they're going to win this one?
Uh, no, not really. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Godwin has definitely had a down year this year. Chase without Burrow is not exciting. Charbonnet might not start, but then I guess he would have Kenny Walker if he's healthy.
I
Um,
I will say it would be very Bombers luck if that team just randomly blew up and he lost the first pick this week.
it has potential, and I was thinking about it too. Like, if you are tanking, is there a better player than Kyle Pitts in your roster? Because like you have to
And
play him.
that would be the guy that would hilariously put up like a 40-point
180 and a
Yeah.
touchdown. It's so stupid.
to get you the win.
It really worked. And then Gabe Davis has that potential too to just like
Oh, for sure.
explode
Yeah.
and just ruin everybody's day. It would be so crazy. I would love a Bombers win though, for the Armadillos, of course, and just my overall fandom. But
Also, I really hope he starts Hawkinson over Kyle Pitts.
I would think so. If not, we might have to. Well, the problem is he's the VP of legal services, so we're gonna have to hire a third party contractor for that. Because that would be a little questionable. I'm also taking a hard look at the Elks roster too, because there's a few folks that are not currently in the lineup that probably should be. So we might have to have a little tank watch happening here this week. But yeah, the Plague should win.
If there's two people in this league that should be working with like strong ethics,
Yeah, Senator Gilchrist and VP of Legal Services, Justin Senior. I feel like it should happen. Anywho, yeah, it feels like a Plague victory. The receiving core is back to full strength here too for the Plague, with Jefferson coming back. Obviously, the running back situation is not good for the Plague, but they do have quite a bit of talent to kind of overcome maybe some of those deficiencies.
yeah, I mean, I will say it's those top three guys at receiver are so good, but it's just not as scary without like their quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's true. I mean, Aiden O'Connell.
You've got Herbert, who literally Keenan Allen is the only one I think that even plays on that offense at this point. Like
he's the only one that does anything. That's for sure. Like,
which makes it really difficult when you've got like the entire defense scheming against you. And then Devontae Adams is playing with Aiden O'Connell, who's been fine.
It's been fine.
Fine.
But that's exactly. I mean, I'm not expecting any more than fine.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a real question: how fast does Brandon Staley get fired after the year?
He better.
I mean, if he doesn't, I would be. He's got.
Why wouldn't you give like Kellen Moore like a tryout for a few weeks? That's and the same in Washington. Like, why isn't like you've got these guys that are like interviewing every year for head coach?
Yeah, like why not give it a shot?
Give them a tryout, and if you like what they're doing, great. If you don't,
like I kind of understand Rivera because of just like the prestige value and like the fact that he's been, around a long time. Like I kind of get it, but
prestige of what?
Well, I mean, just not maybe a prestige is maybe the wrong word, but just like the tenure and the experience. But with like Staley, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't want him at all. I've seen enough, and it's not only has the team massively underperformed this year, but just in previous years, like the head coaching decisions, like game management has been so bad. I've seen enough.
Staley got hired with the idea that their defense would be top of the league and they wouldn't give up explosive plays, and they've been bottom in both of those.
Horrible.
He's been hired.
He's been really, really bad. He's been bad, and then Moore is kind of like you said, like that budding star of an offensive coordinator. Maybe that stock kind of goes down this year as a coaching candidate, but give him a shot. Why not? I agree.
It's tough though. Like they've lost like so many players on offense. Mike Williams, it was Joshua Palmer. They get QJ who can't fucking catch.
He can't do anything.
Can't do anything.
He can hardly get to the stadium. He's
And
bad.
I don't know what happened to their offensive line. I don't think they're that injured.
I think they just completely underperformed as a team this year. I just
Hasn't
don't.
been.
I don't think anybody is playing up to the level they should be. Maybe except for Keenan Allen. That might be it.
Mhm.
Anywho, let's go to our next game, and that is the Lambs versus the Elk. This clearly feels like a Lambs victory. I threw James Cook in the running back slot for the Elk, who doesn't have him currently in there, but don't think it's going to matter too much. This is a Elk are frankly hoping they lose this game for the draft pick. Obviously, James at this point is trying to just get into that first overall, seeding. Sean, maybe talk a little bit more about that seeding. I know we didn't talk about it in the scenarios, but maybe just quickly mention that scenario that you talked about earlier.
I mean, like the couple that I didn't send to you, like James has got like I would say like a 99.9% chance of staying in the number 1 spot. He'd have to lose to Dustin and get outscored by my team by like 60 points, which is not going to happen. So like I was looking at stuff like that just to make sure I crossed all my T's and dotted all the I's. So making sure everybody was kind of like what their possibilities were.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same on the other end of the spectrum, like if Dustin loses and Justin wins, then they'll flip. Stuff like that. Those were the other couple things.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that the Lambs are going to lose to the Elks. So that's the first
Yeah,
thing. And then the second thing is 60 points, and I don't think that's happening either. So, but yeah, it's good just to mention they could happen, I guess, but very unlikely. James's team, the Lambs, are your number 1 competition, I would imagine. In your mind, this team is very good. Eckler really is kind of the only guy that I'm looking here and being like, damn, what's happened lately with Eckler?
Herbert,
like we said,
but we kind of know what's happened with Herbert. I don't think it's necessarily his fault.
No. Eckler over the last few weeks, his numbers have been in week 11 he had 5, week 12 he had 4, and last week he had 2. This week he gets a Denver matchup at home, whose run defense has been pretty crap this year. So maybe this is kind of the resurgence game for Eckler. He also gets a pretty good playoff schedule. He's playing the Raiders, Buffalo, and then Denver again. So if, obviously when they get in the playoffs, there's a pretty good matchups for him to maybe rebound. But boy, does he have a good receiving core with CeeDee Lamb and Mike Evans this year. I mean, CeeDee is really taking it to the next level, and then Mike Evans is doing Mike Evans things, maybe even better than a lot of people were expecting. I mean, I think most people in this league knew that he was still going to be a top guy, but
I can't remember if I was on the Spicy Takes episode or not that we did. I wanted to do something with the Bucs receivers because I said that Mike Evans would miss his 1,000-yard season, but would be the much better receiver to Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like half right.
You got half right, I guess. I mean, he's the number 4 wide receiver this year. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's arguably his best year ever. I think he had another year where he finished 6th.
He does get New Orleans in championship week, though. So that'll be nice.
Well, you got the old Marshawn Lattimore Rock'em Sock'em Robot game. That's always a classic.
They'll be out of it at that point. He'll be getting ready to get thrown out of that game in the first quarter.
Yeah, he might not even give a shit. I mean, who knows? Hey, but I'm telling you, I think the Bucs are playing for I haven't looked up the tiebreakers or anything, but I think the Bucs Falcons game this week is for first place in the NFC South, which is embarrassing. Winner will be 6 and 7. If it's the Bucs is so bad.
The Saints should be embarrassed that they are not in first place in that division.
They got to clear everybody out. They got to just. I know they're stuck with Carr for next year, but you got to just wipe everybody. It's just not working. The Saints should not be this bad.
Brutal.
Too much talent. Anywho, I'm gonna skip by this game. This is a Lambs victory. It looks like. Let's go to Armadillo's Battle Axes. Frankly, probably the second best game this week, in my opinion. Just in terms of the implications with fantasy playoffs, and then of course just I think our projected point total is separated by just a whopping 2 points. So definitely an interesting matchup. Also has some implications too on the Battle Axis seeding. in case I get the victory. He might get bumped out of that third slot that he's currently sitting in at 8-5. So let's start with the quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts versus Justin Fields. Hurts and the Eagles. I want you to talk a little bit about the Hurts and the Eagles situation because you're watching the games mostly. It seems a little interesting right now.
Yeah, I that game last week was such an easy call. Like I knew, I don't know, since the Niners lost last year in the NFC Championship game that this game was going to happen like this. Like they were pissed.
Dude, they were upset and they showed it. It was crazy.
So
Great
we'll
game.
see. It's so weird going from that and then jumping in. Like this game against the Cowboys is so much more important than that game against the Niners was.
Yeah.
And even if they lose to the Cowboys this week, like they still have like a 60% chance of being the number 1 seed in the NFC.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, we'll see. They're gonna look to not lose back-to-back games because I don't think Jalen Hurts has lost back-to-back games as a starter. It's like in the last like 3 years or something stupid. So, yeah, I think better player Hurts, better matchup probably Justin Fields this week with the Lions.
I would agree with that. And the last time he played the Lions was week 11. He threw up 24 points. Pretty efficient as a passer, but just nothing going on passing-wise. But he tore him up on the ground for 18 carries for 104 yards. So it seems like and it's a dome game as well. No, it's not a dome game. It's at Soldier Field. So they are at home, but it's a sloppy field as usual up there. So I do think this is a good week for Fields. But I don't know if it's going to be enough to overtake Hurts. Pretty much, Hurts' baseline at this point is pretty much 24 points a week, 25 points a week with his rushing. Getting into the running backs, this is a pretty interesting matchup. So Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, we know who they are at this point, I think, in their career. Those are going to be the stalwarts for the Battle Axes to win this game. My running backs, I'm getting Gus Edwards back from bye. As little of touches as he gets, somehow he gets a touchdown every week. So we gotta hope he just keeps doing that.
As the Lamar Jackson owner, I know he gets fucking touchdown.
The ultimate vulture.
Insane.
He's giving me Lendale White vibes, just where he gets right down to the goal line and then it's just not the guy you want it to be, and it's Gus Edwards. So I'm thankful for him. He's kept me afloat pretty much all year.
Keaton Mitchell's usage was going up, like it seemed like every week before the bye. So I'll be curious to see how that breaks down. But I think Gus is pretty safe in his role for them. So you just got to hope that they're on the goal line a good amount.
Yeah, he's in this since week 7. He's had 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 touchdowns since week 7. So he's pretty much just scoring touchdowns and not really doing a whole lot else. He reminds me a lot of Jamal Williams last year. He has some Jamal Williams vibes. Maybe not as many touches, but something similar to that. And then Jaylen Warren, as we mentioned earlier, if Najee Harris maybe is a little banged up, could get some more touches, which is exactly what he needs. He's so efficient.
Yeah, if there's a player that's going to break off an explosive play in that game tomorrow, that's him. It's probably going to be him.
He's been very, very good in his limited touches this year. He's averaging almost 6 yards a carry. He's also tacked on 40 catches for 6 yards a catch as well. So I've been thankful to have him on my team this year, but I'm really hoping that with that change of offensive coordinator that's been happening, and then maybe with also with Kenny Pickett going down, they decide to run it a little bit more tomorrow night, and then maybe get some extra points that way. Let's get into the receivers. So I have, speaking of Steelers, I have Pickens, I have Nico Collins, who's been just rock solid for me all year, and then Brandon Ayuk, who also has been rock solid for me all year. Receiving core has really, really kept this thing afloat for me pretty much the entire year. Going against Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, and Christian Watson for the Battle Axes. What do you think about this wide receiver matchup? I feel like it's maybe closer than people think.
I think I would go with your side for the starting receivers. The only way I have is Nico Collins going against the Jets.
Gonna get some sauce.
Probably the worst matchup you can throw at your receivers going into trying to make the playoffs. So we'll see. And I know Bobby Slowick he's a good OC, so he'll scheme up something good. CJ Stroud's leading the league in passing yards.
Yeah, no Tank Dell either this week.
So we'll see. Then we'll have him, Noah Brown. They'll probably scheme in tight ends against that Jets defense, and probably
Sounds
try.
like they're getting Schultz back too.
Yeah, Jets not so great against tight ends especially compared to wide receivers. They're like the best in the league against receivers. So we'll see. Nico Collins has been so good though. He's always got a size advantage, so he's always got a chance to score for sure.
And he's been the number 9 receiver this year, which is just unreal. I would not have even remotely thought that. You were trying to get him off me earlier off in the off season.
I'm pretty sure I sent you a trade offer for Gus Edwards, Jaylen Warren, and Nico Collins.
I think there was a point. I have to go back and look at my history, but I'm pretty sure all those guys were involved in something at some point. I'm glad I helped. We'll put it that way. At this point, it's looking good. And then Brandon Ayuk, number 12 receiver on the year. He's had 10 points or more in every single game since week 8. Very consistent, and you love to see it. Pickens, I'm hoping gets a little bit more. I'm thinking Trubisky is going to be slinging it a little tomorrow. I think there's going to be a little bit of that I don't give a shit mentality tomorrow, and maybe they start slinging it down the field, which would be great for Pickens. But it's fucking Mitch Trubisky. What we can't ask for a whole lot in that game. I'm hoping for 5 points.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I see Jameson Williams on your bench. I'm like,
I was thinking about it too.
If I'm dice rolling, I think I'd rather go with the team with the better quarterback.
Yeah, to me they are very close. I just get really worried about Jameson's touches because he's not touching the ball hardly at all. I mean, if you look at his last couple of games, he let's see. So he had week 10 2 targets, week 11 3, week 12 3. Last week he had 1 target and 1 carry. So and he's playing half the snaps. So it's just not like he's doing a lot with those snaps, but it's just not really it's not making me feel good about starting him when he's only touching the ball 3 times a game. So I'm gonna leave Pickens in for now. We'll see how it goes, but I'm also gonna look at the weather because those matchups always seem to be a shit show in the Northeast this time of year. Big thing for my team last week and this week is Devon Achane coming back. Man, dude, every time he touches the ball, it seems like it's something huge. He hasn't had a single game under 20 points that he's played in, other than the one he got hurt in the first play. This guy might be the golden ticket for me, perhaps, to make a little run here.
Yeah, we'll see. He was definitely much more involved when the game wasn't in doubt, for sure.
True.
So we'll see. And against Tennessee this week, I don't think that's a question that's going to need to be answered. I think that game will also not be in doubt for a while.
You would think. Yeah. You would think. And they might be trying to preserve Mostert a little bit too as they get closer to the playoffs. Sure. So maybe they'll just keep running Achane. I really need him to show up this week. This is going to be the 1 week that I'm going to need him to get over this hump. And then the other 2 guys on my roster, actually Ferguson versus Kittle is actually an interesting discussion too. Ferguson has been pretty hot in the last 5 weeks, with Dak kind of blowing up as well. So I'm having a little bit of a tough time with him and Kincaid at tight end, but I'm feeling like Ferguson is getting more work at this point and is a little bit more reliable perhaps for the time being. But to me, that's a total coin flip. And then Kittle on the other side for Scavelli, Kittle's Kittle. I think we all know it just really is game plan dependent with what they're doing.
I was going to say, I don't think it's a coin flip for you at all. I think Ferguson's a top 3 tight end play this week.
Hey, I love to hear that. Thank you for saying that.
He's playing Eagles. The Eagles have the worst linebacking core in the NFL.
It's not good. They're 22nd ranked against tight ends this year. So it's not ideal.
Against tight ends.
He's also coming off a game with 8 targets. So he was definitely heavily used last week. For Scavelli's squad, I'm pulling up his team again. Kittle, I haven't really followed what's been going on with him lately. So he had 3 really good games in a row, week 8 to through 11. He had 15, 18, and 14. Then he drops a 2 and a 7 last week against the Eagles. He gets Seattle this week, so could be another interesting game. Could be really with Kittle. It could be any week. I really don't know, and I don't think Scavelli knows either. But you have to put him in. He's the number 4 tight end this year.
Yeah, you start him. You gotta start
And
him.
you got him. You start him. Scavelli also has Tony Pollard, Odell Beckham, and Evan Ingram in his flex spots. Frankly, I'm not loving that.
Revenge game for OBJ.
I guess
He's playing the Rams. I don't know.
it's definitely questionable, to say the least. I'm seeing that he hasn't really set his roster either, so it's hard to really tell what that roster is going to look like. But Evan Ingram without potentially Lawrence, that's kind of sketch. And then
Going into Cleveland, yeah, I don't expect that to be a guy that he starts. Although it's not a whole lot else out there for him to start
I
looking.
mean, Odell really hasn't been. I mean, he has had a couple of decent weeks, week 10 and 11, but
he does have Aaron Jones on his IR, who is questionable this week. So
ooh, that's an interesting one. They ruled him out last week, but I mean, he might come back this week. That would suck for me. So yeah, so I mean, the flex spots. Tony Pollard is Tony Pollard. He's gonna get his touches and he'll be fine. But I'm a little bit concerned with those other 2 ones. All right, so let's get your pick. Who wins this game, Sean?
I'm going to go with the Armadillos.
Interesting. I feel like this is as true of a coin flip as it gets. The only thing I'm really scared about with Scavelli's team is I'm scared about the big 3 of Diggs, Barkley, and Henry. If they all go off, then it's going to be pretty challenging for me to win this week, I think. Oh, hold on a second. I have a wonderful text from Adam Thibodeau. I asked him to be on the podcast tonight, and he's just getting back to me. So I'm going to see if we can get a late night guest on the podcast. So give me 1 second here.
Nice.
Let's see. I'm telling him we're on now. Maybe he'll hop in. I feel like I invited him because he's been the talk of the town with his Flacco news. So I figured I'd give him the opportunity. All right, so let's go to the next page here. So I compiled Sleeper's statistics that they provide for average points per game and then the overall sit-start percentage that I think we were discussing a few weeks ago. So now that we're close to the playoffs, this is a pretty decent indicator now of kind of where everybody is at. So let's start with the sit and start percentage. This is kind of a weird stat because, I mean, there's some teams where it's pretty much locked in who you're starting every week and who your best like potential players are. So I feel like it's a little bit of a skewed stat. You seeing anything there that is of any interest to you on the left side there? I'm going to send.
It's hard to speak on other people's teams, trying to think of like who could be on their bench every week. I can speak for my team. I know I sat Hopkins the week that he blew up with Levis starting, and I know I've sat Sutton a couple times where he's scored. And then I feel like Lamar Jackson has only been my best quarterback like twice or maybe 3 times this year, but I've started him every week. So that's probably where it's hitting me for mine. But it'd be hard for me to try and figure out everybody else's teams on that one.
Yeah, I feel like for mine, I haven't really had a whole lot of other people to start that are going to get better. So like I feel like mine's a little bit skewed because I've been playing pretty much the normal 7 to 8 people every week that I've been starting a whole year. I think really the only difference is like tight end maybe. I'm starting Jalen Hurts every week. I'm starting Ayuk every week. So I think that skews it a little bit for me. But the interesting one is the Muskrats down at 78%. I don't feel like they have a whole lot of depth either. So that one's maybe a little interesting. But let's move over to the right to the average points per game. So this is based on just point total for the whole year. So this is pretty, I think it's pretty indicative of where the league stands at this point. Battle Axes, a little bit lower than maybe expected. Oh, here we go. There he is. It's Adam Thibodeau on the line.
Can you hear me?
I can.
So, buddy.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get a bigger screen.
Yeah, you do your thing. We're talking about the average points per game that Sleeper provides to kind of see what stats kind of line up with what's been happening this year. The Lambs 143 points per game, Long Gamers 138 points per game, 1 and 2, pretty much aligns with what we've been saying. These are probably the best two teams this year. Lionheads at 129 playing a rough schedule this year, so they're not quite hitting the mark. And then you got the Plague at 124, which is, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year the Armadillos would be within 1 point, I would have laughed in your faces. But here we are. Cheese Fries kind of rounding out the playoff group here at 119, above the Battle Axes and the Muskrats. And that leads me to get with our newfound guest here, Adam. We're going to go back to your matchup against the Muskrats, and I want to ask you, what are you thinking about heading into this matchup? Do you see any interesting 1v1 matchups against specific position groups? And I think everybody wants to know what you're thinking about Joe Flacco right now.
Yeah, I mean, all year I've been kind of doing the quarterback carousel. Really, the day after I made the trade, I think it was, then I dealt with the injuries. So maybe that's like the curses of fantasy football telling me don't trade the guy who got you a championship, which I never got the chance to get on the podcast and talk about it. But briefly, I just thought it was overall adding more value to the team considering what I put into Richardson. And I saw, a little bit of the upside that I could imagine would be there. So I thought the haul would give me a more balanced and a better team moving forward. But yeah, maybe ever since I made that trade, I'm all of a sudden cursed because I'm dealing with all of these injuries. Let's see. With Flacco, I mean, he's pretty much just like Tyrod, someone that I have to start pretty much. So it's not like I'm imagining 25 points, but if I could get, maybe 20 points out of Flacco like he did last week, I would be fine because I feel like the rest of the team, I think they're honestly underperforming for me. I look at it like Breece Hall, he's underperforming. Waddle's underperforming. Gibbs is I don't want to say he's underperforming because it's due that Montgomery is going to get a lot of the touches. But I feel like the only players that are really like overperforming are maybe Michael Pittman and maybe Rachaad White. But then again, that they're like kind of picking it up now. So I feel like, I don't even remember your question, but when I look at this matchup, I was looking at Alex's team this afternoon just to see what they've been doing recently. And his guys are honestly not in great spots this week. Like T. Higgins last week, he put up 3 points and he's dealing with the backup quarterbacks and he's been out all year anyway. So I don't know what he'll do. And Calvin Ridley, he's been up and down. He had 2 weeks recently where he was good, but now his quarterback's gone. So it makes you wonder like how well the connection's going to be. Puka, I mean, he's good. So I'm sure he'll do fine from there. And Zach Moss,
Puka's at Baltimore this week, who's got probably the best or one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah, that's a tough matchup. So I guess it depends on how good Stafford plays. But
yeah, I was thinking earlier when we were talking about it, it might really become, does Pat Mahomes have his signature Pat Mahomes game in an interesting matchup against the Bills at home in Arrowhead off of 2 losses? I feel like that could be the deciding factor in this game when it's all said and done.
Yeah, well, I mean, because we're in a 6-point quarterback league, the quarterbacks can really blow up and give you like 40 points out of nowhere. But Mahomes is the type of quarterback who can do it. It's not like there's a lot of them. So I've had him carry my teams to do just that. And he's one of those players where like, if your team is pretty solid across the board and then you have the elite quarterback, then they can really put you at like 150-point weeks every week. But honestly, the talent that he's throwing to is not that good. I mean, the only players that seem to be decent are Kelsey and Rashid Rice. I think that's how you say his name. Because everyone else is underperforming heavily. I mean, Sky Moore sucks. MVS sucks. Justin Watson is a 4th string wide receiver.
He said his name over Tony too, which shows you how bad Tony is.
Well, Tony hasn't
on the team.
exceeded this year. I don't think he's done more than like 30 yards in a game. I could be wrong, but it feels like
He's
it.
awful. He's so bad.
Which is kind of crazy because everyone went into the season thinking he would be the one, and rightfully so. He seemed like he had the most talent of them all. But yeah, I mean, it could be. It could. I guess it would be the biggest meme or the biggest joke on how this goes with the quarterback performances because, as it was mentioned in the chat earlier, like Mahomes is my guy. I made the idea to trade him. Well, I didn't make the idea. We discussed it together and made the trade, but I made the decision to trade him. And then I'm out here starting Flacco and dealing with quarterback issues all year. So like, it would just
Do
be
you regret
like,
the trade?
no, I honestly don't because I'll go into the trade thoughts a little bit. I wasn't going to make the trade if I didn't get Kyler because I wanted something that felt like an obvious, like, okay, this is just the smart move. So, I mean, I gave him 2 elite players, which he gave me 2 elite players too. And then I just figured it was a little context based on making the trade in the sense that, I didn't go into drafting Richardson thinking I'm going to trade Mahomes. I just figured I evaluated the talent to be a potential elite player, and from there, that could give me more options to trade away a quarterback to get my team better. And I mean, I only saw Richardson play for like 4 games, so it's not like he showed me enough. But I just figured I saw a lot of upside that I already expected from him, and the players that I was getting, and Waddle and Brees. I mean, I needed a running back, and that's an elite running back right there. And Waddle's a top number 2 kind of player. He hasn't been wonderful this year, but he's young and he's very good in a good offense. So I figured by throwing in Kyler with the context of me investing in Richardson and seeing some upside, I felt like it was, not a trade that you want to make. You don't want to make trades where you're trading Mahomes and a young tight end away, but it just seemed like it was a smart trade. And I don't know if I would have been better or worse this year if I had made the trade or not, but I feel like I'm set up moving forward better because I've got myself, an elite running back and a really good receiver. So I've got quarterback options to replace them with, and I can always draft one if I need one too. So I'm feeling like I'm able to rotate that door of quarterbacks in the league because if you think about it, they come at good values in our league. Like you can, I mean, maybe I spent this first and Vince spent the second on Bryce Young and Stroud went in the third, but it kind of like just tells you like quarterbacks do go randomly and they tend to go later and they can turn out really good. So it's not like it's a position that's impossible to replace to get an elite talent.
Justin Herbert went 410. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. Lamar went late.
He
Joe
went
Burrow
310
a little later.
I think you got Jalen Hurts in like the third, didn't you?
He was undrafted actually.
He was the
He's a supplemental pick, I think.
Yeah.
And then I think Dan cut him, and then that's when I picked him up. And then I think there was another 4th-round pick somewhat recently too that went off. So that kind of proves your point a little bit that you don't maybe need to invest heavily in a quarterback to get a backup. But you kind of did get screwed with a bad bye week timing with Kyler having a bye, pretty much in the most important game of the year. But you can't fault that for a long-term play where you get Breece Hall, Jalen Waddle, and you can then have Kyler and Anthony Richardson for years to come, ideally. So that would, I still think the value is pretty good for your trade. Just right now, as it stands, it's just kind of a crappy situation, but it's going to work out.
I would just go back to like it's just like the worst luck ever when you make the trade in the first week of games. Then the quarterback you planned on using for the year since Kyler was on his bye gets hurt. So it's like, of course, that's how it's going to go. Like, that's just
here we go. Here we go again.
Right? Like, I mean, I liked the players I got, but it's like really the one outcome that I really didn't want to happen literally just happened.
Yeah, and I feel like with Anthony Richardson, are you concerned about his injury history and him moving forward? Is that kind of also why you really wanted to get that Kyler back in that trade?
Well, when it came to the trade, two-part question or way that I would answer it. When it came to the trade, the injury factor didn't play at all for me. Because I mean, yes, I had Richardson already, but I plan on him being the guy. But what I mean is like I didn't change my value opinion on Kyler being injured or not for the trade. I valued Kyler as he needs to be in the trade in order for me to do it because he is enough to show me that I'm getting good value and like I probably regret it. Um, and then what was the second? What was your question again? Because that one was like Kyler had to be in the deal to get it done. Like I wasn't going to make the trade if he didn't. Like I didn't even want to hit the accept button on the trade. To be honest with you, I kept looking at it and pull back and like I'm like I don't know if I want to do this. But
Yeah, I mean we're not that removed from a Kyler Murray having a quarterback 3 overall season. It was only a couple of years ago in 2021, I believe. So it's not like, I mean, he also does have elite upside when healthy. I mean, his rushing ability, his scrambling ability, he can absolutely be a top 5 quarterback. So I agree with your logic there on picking up, basically what could be another elite quarterback to go along with Richardson, who maybe does have the injury history. You can kind of cover your back there. So I'll ask you this next question. It's maybe a incendiary question. What do you think about the Muskrats team? Do you think they deserve to be a playoff team this year?
I mean, when you compare him to the other teams, and we have 6 teams that can make it, I would say probably not because his big name players are underperforming. Besides Laporta and maybe Swift. I mean Puka. I don't want to forget about Puka. But it seems like a lot of his players are underperforming, and he doesn't really have any depth. So he pretty much is stuck with like 10 revolving players through the lineup, and none of them are really like not none of them, but a decent amount of them aren't doing what their name suggests they should. So I would say he should be, maybe like the 7th team, but I mean he's sitting here in a spot where one of us wins and gets in, the other one goes home, and it's great because we've got a rivalry. And I can't really talk shit to Alex too much recently because I'm in a situation where my team's bad, so I'm not in a competitive situation with him. But here we are, and we've got a matchup where, I mean, it'll be fun. I mean, I don't think his team's that good. I think his team like has random splash weeks, but I think a lot of it is just underperformance. So I'll be curious to see what he does with it because you don't have any draft picks, so you gotta maneuver or just keep the guys and make smart waiver wire picks or something. But I don't think he's necessarily like a championship contender by any means. He'll get knocked out at some point, even if he gets in the playoffs.
So I'm going back on our slides here. It looks like you may have joined a little bit late, so I wanted to catch you up on your specific clinching scenarios. So Sean came up with these over the course of today, and we appreciate him kind of coming up with these. But here are your scenarios. So if you win, you're going to get in. So this isn't do or die game for sure. You can also clinch a playoff berth with the Plague losing and the Lionheads losing.
So Sean plays the Lionheads. Who does the Plague play?
The
Dustin.
Plague, I think they play Dustin. So it's unlikely that happens, but it is a possibility. And then the highest seed that you can earn is a 4th seed with a win, and then me winning, and then you also have to maintain a point lead against the Battle Axes, which it looks like as of right now you have a 26-point advantage. So you could go as high as 4, depending on how things play out. But really, I think you're focused on the winning scenario here. You just gotta get past the good old Muskrats.
Honestly, I hope that I get. Yes, this is actually exact. How would it go? No, yeah, I got to play him in the championship anyways. If it were to get that far, what I was gonna say is I hope I get the 6th seed, and I hope I get the 6th seed because then if I lose in the first round of the playoffs, my pick's better. But I also hope I get the 6th seed because then I may play Scavelli, and I think Scavelli's the worst team of the playoffs. So I would hope.
The only way you get the 6th seed is if the second scenario plays out. So that would be you losing, but also Vince and Dan losing. So it's a scary
Okay.
place to be.
Yeah,
But there's
yeah.
if you win, there's like a very strong chance. Well, if you win, you're either playing Eric or Scavelli.
Those are pretty good matchups. I'll be honestly, as my team is not a superstar team right now, so I would
those are the-
feel decent playing my team.
Yeah, I would rather. I think that I just wouldn't want to play Vince's team because Vince's team has been going off recently. Like when you watch the weekly matchups and just see points, like he'll have like a 90-point week, and then he'll have like a 170-point week, and then he'll have like a 140, and then he'll have another 170. So like my team hasn't been able to touch, I don't think, like over 135 since I had that big blow up week a couple weeks ago. So I'm just like praying and hoping I play the teams that don't have ceilings until I have to, if I can somehow get there.
Yeah, the Lionheads dropped 175 in week 12, and then 169 against me last week. So he's definitely the hottest team as of right now, in my opinion. So it makes a lot of sense. And then we also talked about the Muskrats winning situation. He needs to win and get in, just like you. He's pretty much in the same scenario as you, it seems like. He needs a Lauderdale Lionheads and a Plague loss to get in, and also can get as high as the 4th seed, depending on how things play out. So it's going to be interesting. I think the only team, Sean, that needs help to get in is the Plague.
Yeah.
The Plague need to win, and they also need the Lionheads to lose. Or they can win and then get the Texas Armadillos to lose, but they also have to keep the point lead that they have against me, which is 5.5. So that's a nail biter. So it's definitely going to be a crazy finish to the season. I can't remember being as excited for a last week in quite a while. I think this is going to be a really fun one. So let's hypothetically say that this will be my last question here. Oh, we got a couple comments here. Oh, it's Alex. Here he comes. He says, "Go home, Tibbs, you drunk." Then he also followed up with, "The Muskrats are getting a title."
Oh,
Oh no. Well, that's interesting.
I mean,
You know, everybody's expecting results, you know, right away.
They're expecting the results. So let's assume that the championship ends up being the 1 and 2 seed, which we expect to be the Long Gamers and the Lambs. Who's your pick out of those two?
Without looking at matchups, I would take James' team. James' team seems like it's just consistently putting up 150. Like no matter what, it's putting up 150. And obviously he could have a slump week like he just did this week, but he still put up 130. And he had like Brian Robinson put up 5 and got hurt, and Tank got 0, and his tight end probably did nothing, and he's still and Herbert put up like 6
probably
or 7.
did nothing. His tight end probably did nothing. That truer words have never been spoken. Unfortunately, this team never has a tight end.
Too. So like
This guy just puts up 143 a week without a tight end.
Yeah. Look, his team's good this year. Like, I mean, it was good. Did he win the championship or Scavelli last year? I can't remember.
It was Scavelli last year and James the year before.
Okay. Yeah,
so I mean, he's right there.
Yeah, he would be upset if he didn't at least get to the championship for sure. But I still think, I mean, it'll be a very close game between him and Sean, because I don't want to discredit Sean's team at all, because it's been really good this year. And matchups with those players, any of them can go off, and that's pretty much what it'll come down to. But I think James' team's just been a little bit better, so I'd take them.
That's a fair assessment. All right, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up. Tibbs, really appreciate you hopping on here at the end to provide some insight and some thoughts into your matchup. And Sean, thank you again for putting together all the scenarios. Made for really good discussion.
happy to do it.
It's gonna be a fun ride right here to the end, and I wish the best for everybody out there. And good luck to you and your game, Tibbs. And I think that's the game I'm gonna be watching the tightest, just for the shits and giggles. So I'll see you guys in the chat. And it was a great time. Thanks for hopping on, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys next time on the PHU Dynasty podcast.